Jimmy Butler and Brandon Ingram may be on the trade block. How does that affect Kyle Kuzma's trade value? Immensely. I have three reasons why his trade value would definitely take a hit if they truly are indeed on the trade block. Come on, let's talk about it next on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott again. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Wizards daily newsletter, a one-stop shop for the ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Wizards newsletter. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LockedOnNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, everybody, a lot to talk about tonight. There are reports that Jimmy Butler and Brandon Ingram could indeed be on the trade block for their respective teams. If so, how does that affect Kyle Kuzma's trade value leading up to the trade deadline? I have three ways where it could definitely hinder his trade value to a certain degree, though. All right, so let's get into the first one for the night. Contract. So as we all know, if you look at the contracts of Kyle Kuzma, Jimmy Butler, and Brandon Ingram, you could argue that Kyle Kuzma has the more team-friendly contract. Now, if you look at his contract, he is in year 2 of a 4-year contract where he is making, let me bring it up real quick, he is making $23.5 million this season. Then over the course of the next 2 seasons, it drops to 21.4, then 19.3. So it is a very team-friendly contract. Not only for the Wizards to have a player who can produce 20 points a night, be that number one scoring option, and not have to tangle up the salary cap to do so. For teams that want to acquire probably a third, fourth, at worst fifth scoring option for for a playoff run, you can do so and not break the bank to do so. So I think that Kyle Kuzma, his contract is very team friendly. Jimmy Butler, it really, if you look at the dynamics behind all three players, it really depends on what you're trying to acquire, right? I mean, looking at Kyle Kuzma, yes, here in Washington, he is a number one scoring option, but on a contender, best case scenario, you're probably looking at third scoring option. You're probably, really looking at a fourth, maybe fifth scoring option on a contender. So obviously you're getting a really good value for a player who can definitely provide 20 plus points a night. Now, will he be averaging around 20 on a contending team? Probably not. You're probably looking more to where he's averaging now, around 15 points per game. But he's a guy who could definitely be a microwave scorer off the second unit. He can play the 4, he can play the 3, very versatile. And we know what the shortcomings are. High dependency on his jump shot, and at times can be inefficient. But he's definitely a guy who can definitely score at a high level and can definitely be a nice scoring punch off the second unit for a playoff team. Now, looking at Jimmy Butler, Miami Heat, his contract does get a little tricky. And like I said, it all depends on what you're looking for and what you're willing to give up, right? Because if you look at Jimmy Butler, he has a 1-year, this is an expiring contract. Now, he does have a player option for his second year. Now, this year, he's making $48 million. Good Lord almighty. Now, if his player option is for $52.4 million. So, obviously, for a team to want to acquire Jimmy Butler, look at his age, it's not going to be a long-term commitment. You're probably looking at, best case scenario, he doesn't enact his player option, tries to get paid in the offseason. But again, look at his age. He's age 35. I think he knows the writing on the wall that his window personally is getting shorter and shorter to win that championship because, again, he is 35 years old. So teams that would want his services would be a team where overall as a team, their window's closing. And I'm looking at a couple teams, and we're going to get into the teams in a little bit because but the Lakers are one team that definitely at first pops out at you, right? Their championship window is definitely closing. We don't know how many years we have left with LeBron James and LA. Can Anthony Davis pick up being the franchise guy to build around? He's getting up there in age also, and he's an injury-prone player who has gotten better with the injury issues, but still, there's definitely a transition coming up for the Lakers. Their championship window is definitely closing. So, do they have the means to acquire Jimmy Butler? It really goes to, and we're going to change the dynamics again, right? If you're Miami, are you rebuilding? Are you retooling? You have Tyler Hero and you have Bam Adebayo as pieces to kind of build around. You got Jaime Jaquez Jr. You have, Nikola Jokic, Jovic, my bad, not Jokic. Oh no, he is not in Miami. Jovic, man. So Nikola Jovic is another young player. So could they retool? Could they go ahead and rebuild? If they decide to rebuild, then they're probably going to move on. But like I said, they could retool because it does remain to be seen whether Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero can be that type of core to build upon and retool, or they just decide to move on from everybody and rebuild. So, like I said, it really depends on what is the vision going forward for Miami to make that move, because obviously they're looking to move on from him. They did not come to an agreement with a long-term contract, and Jimmy Butler again is getting up there in age. So to me, the Lakers are probably your best case scenario. But getting back to salaries, all right. So contract value, looking at Brandon Ingram, it starts to get interesting now, right? All right, so Brandon Ingram is an unexpiring contract. He is looking for a max contract. So again, the dynamics changed because he is 27 years old. So he's a guy who is just now entering his prime. They call him KD Light, a guy who's a scoring-minded wing who definitely could, if you're a young up-and-coming franchise who needs that one guy to kind of build around or add to your core, Brandon Ingram could be that guy. 27 years old, he's a walking bucket, a guy who, the biggest thing with his contract is this: you have to re-sign him. So you have to know for a surety that that's the guy that you want part of your fabric going forward. Because again, if you acquire Brandon Ingram, you're gonna have to re-sign him to a long-term deal, and the chances are he's asking for a max. So you're probably looking at a max contract. So you have to know without a doubt that that's the one piece that's going to push your team over the top. Whether you need whether you need a kind of a young player who's a star in the making to help lead your franchise, or to add to become a second, third option on a playoff team. Brandon Ingram is a guy who is 27 years old. You're going to have to sign him long term. Yes, he is a walking bucket. He's a guy that, again, if you're the team who needs that one guy or that one piece to add to a team that does need, ready to go over the top to make a playoff push, then you definitely acquire Brandon Ingram, especially if you have the assets to do so, because he's 27 years old. He's proven that he is a French all-star. He can score at a high level, and he could be that guy you build around. He could be. Like I said, he's played well in New Orleans. Now, New Orleans has his own issues, Zion and all his issues. We're going to talk about Zion tomorrow, Lord. But, New Orleans, he's played well in New Orleans. He's shown glimpses that he could be that number one scoring option. So you have to really know what you're getting yourself into when it comes to Brandon Ingram, because, again, 27 years old was not the light. 27 years old, scoring-minded wing. He's a guy who can definitely, best case scenario for him, be a number one scoring option for a team. But if you want to add him to, being a Robin or a third option, you could do so. But again, it's going to cost you that max contract. So all three players really depends on what you want, what you're looking for, what you're willing to give up. Because so if looking at everything through the realm of contract value, Kyle Kuzma has the best value because his contract is not going to make or break what you have going on with your salary cap situation. Now, obviously, you're going to have to match salaries, looking at the Wizards, but 23.5 within the realm of how salaries are going in the NBA is not bad at all. So I think that if you're looking for true contract value, Kyle Kuzma to me, it got the best value out of the three. Now, again, Jimmy Butler, he has to be that one piece that's going to push you over the top. I'm looking at the Lakers, a few other teams look at. He has to be that one piece that help you towards a championship run. Because again, $48 million, and then he has a player option for $52 million. You got to really be ready to have him around for a couple of years. Because if I'm Jimmy Butler, and with his age, he wants that championship ring. So he's probably going to enact the player option for the season at next year. So that's a lot of money. $48 million. You're gonna have to give up a lot just salary wise. And then even then, you're gonna look at draft picks. You're looking at one heck of a package to acquire him. So, like I said, I bring up the Lakers because the Lakers are a team where their championship window is closing. And Jimmy Butler, on a personal level, his championship window is closing. So I think it could be a good match. There are some other matches we're gonna look at because he does have three teams that he has on his wish list. So could they be one of the teams? Well, we're going to talk about it. So, and then getting back to Brandon Ingram, 27 years old, he can score at a high clip, and he could be a franchise pillar for a young up-and-coming franchise that needs that one guy or that second scoring option. And then Brandon Ingram is a guy who, look, they call him KD Light for a reason. He's a guy who can score at a high level. He has gained weight over the years to really deal with, get in there defensively and really matching a lot of these bigger and stronger small forwards. So he's versatile. I know they played him in 2-3 different positions. So if you have no problem giving him a 23-year-old guy who's just entering his prime, who can score at a high level at max contract, then maybe that's what that would be your best route. But to me, if you're looking at true value to add some scoring, you're looking at Kyle Kuzma is probably the best contract value. But then all three of them depends on the situation with your franchise. So we're going to look at the second factor, which is what their potential role would be with the new team. And also the level of interest, because like I said, Jimmy Butler and Brandon Ingram, the teams are looking at Kyle Kuzma, they're all also looking at both of them. So that could be one factor that kind of behooves the Wizards to kind of, try to make that deal before they find better deals for Jimmy Butler or Brandon Ingram. So we're going to get into the other two factors. But before we do, tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NBA action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live, play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can start with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Tonight's episode is also brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between a store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it, y'all. It's that easy. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with a high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with the Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on the first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, everybody, let's get back into it. So the second factor why Jimmy Butler and Brandon Ingram being on the trade block would affect Kyle Kuzma's trade value, and that is potential role. Like I said, and it comes down to the same thing I mentioned with the first one. It all depends on what you're looking for as an organization. Kyle Kuzma. We know that, again, he's the #1 option here in Washington, but for a contending team, a playoff team, you're probably looking at a third option, at worst a fifth option. I truly believe he's, around the third or fourth option on the playoff team. Like I said, when we were trying to win the AC and be a playoff team, or play-in team, rather, when Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis were here, he was a third option. Now, you could argue, yeah, it's a play-in team and A seed. What if it's a team that's a fourth or fifth seed who's, you're probably looking at a fourth option, at worst a fifth option. But he's a guy who could definitely score in a high clip, a guy who can use his size to attack the basket. So has his faults, but most players do, right? We know what he can do. He can, with his contract, again, like we already mentioned, he has value. With his skill set, with his role, you're probably looking at a microwave scorer off the bench, or he can come slide in a lineup where he doesn't need to be the focal point of that lineup. He can be a guy who can provide 10 to 15 points, probably around 5 to 7 rebounds. So he's a guy where you don't need him to be the star. You don't even need him to be first or second or even third option. He's a guy who can definitely pick up the slack if guys are struggling. So I think he definitely has tremendous value with his potential role because he's a lot of versatility. He can come off the bench, he can start, he can play the 3, the 4, and small ball 5. So looking at the role for Jimmy Butler. Now, again, with his contract situation, with his age, you're going to need him to be part of the equation. Probably the third head of a big three. And that's why I say I always echo LA, even though there's a few teams that can definitely use his services to add some star punch to the lineup to be that final piece to win a championship. Again, $48 million, you need him to be, if not the focal point, one of the focal points of the offense. It's a lot of money for a guy where you ain't paying $48 million for a guy that's not going to be a focal point to a certain degree. So he is definitely going to a team where they need that one huge addition to get over the hump and finally win a championship. And that's what I'm saying. I'm looking at LA. And like I said, there's 3 teams on his wish list. We'll see if LA is one of them. Could be. But and looking at Brandon Ingram role, like I said, his role in New Orleans has gone back and forth. He's been the number one option. When his times where Zion is healthy, I know that's a big if. He can be relegated to the second or even third option because looking at their lineup, with DeJounte Murray and with I can't even think his name, man. Coming out of he used to play for Portland. It's been one of those days, guys. He, it really depends when you have that much talent. In New Orleans, he's gone back and forth. There's times where he was Zion being out, he has picked up the slack. But again, when Zion is when he's healthy, which again is a big if with Zion Williamson, but he has picked up the slack and shown potential to be a number one option. So again, it really depends on what role do you envision for him. CJ McCollum, my bad. Been a long day, guys. Should have known CJ McCollum. Yep. So again, if you look at New Orleans, they have DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, and when he's healthy, Zion, and then Brandon Ingram. But you also you look at other players involved, Trey Murphy third and Herbert Jones. So there's a lot of mouths to feed in New Orleans when it comes to ball movement. But look, he's continuing to play high level basketball, man, in my humble opinion. So let's pull up Brandon Ingram's stats real quick. Because looking at this season, he is averaging 22.2 points a game. Come on now. 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and shooting 46.5% from the field. So again, he could be a number one option for a team, could be a number 2 option. At worst, he's not a bad number 3 option. And again, you probably had to resign him to, or you had to sign him to a max contract. But he's 27 years old. He's a guy who can score at a high level. He's gotten better every year. And, like I said, he's not a bad number 3 option. And he's not a bad guy to go pair with another star. So I think that, if you're looking for that, you definitely go out there and get Brandon Ingram. I would love Ingram in the Wizards uniform, but we're just not at that place where we need Brandon Ingram. And I believe we have our small forward of the future that Bilal can play the 2, but still, we're not quite ready for that major piece yet. I would love him in the Wizards uniform, but look, it ain't gonna happen. So, like I said, if you're a team that needs a co-star, a team that maybe needs to add a third head, ready to make a run within the next 3 to 5 years, you go out there and you get Brandon Ingram. So that's looking at the role real quick. So we're gonna get into trade interest real quick, and then we're gonna go ahead and look forward what to expect the rest of the week, guys. So trade interest, and we're gonna start with Jimmy Butler. Now, Jimmy Butler, this is a report. It says that the Heat will listen to Jimmy Butler trade offers, and he has 3 preferred destinations. So let's get into his destinations and whether they could conflict with Kyle Kuzma and potential trades. All right, so number 1, the Houston Rockets. That is one team that he has on his wish list. Now, where could he fit? He would definitely be taking over for Dylan Brooks at the 3. But like I said, number 2, the Dallas Mavericks. Another team that has been linked to Kyle Kuzma, not only from last year, but the last couple of years. So, and number 3, another team that's been linked to Kyle Kuzma, the Golden State Warriors. They fell short with Paul George and Lauri Markkanen, and they're looking to add some more talent around not only Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, but Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and the young core that you have there in Golden State. So, obviously, if you look at the teams, it tells you what. If you want to move on from Kyle Kuzma and really get ahead of the game in the trade market, you have to move him sooner or later. You have to move him because if you allow the Miami Heat and the New Orleans Pelicans to really take the time to find the best package, you could, you really see suitors for Kyle Kuzma go towards one of them. Now, you got to be realistic. You look at the money situation. Golden State, are they going to be willing to, really put together the package necessary to get Jimmy Butler? That's a good question. Dallas, you put Jimmy Butler in there, but he's going to have to be addition by subtraction. You're probably saying bye-bye to Klay Thompson because you're not going to be able to, maybe you can finesse it and maybe you can have a lineup with Klay Thompson, Jimmy Butler, Kyrie Irving, and Luka Doncic. That is a crazy lineup. But like I said, really depends on what you're willing to give up for him because you got to imagine the package for Jimmy Butler is going to be immaculate. I'm telling you, because whatever for Miami, they want to give up Jimmy Butler, even though they did not come to an agreement on an extension. They're going to want some future pieces, whether in the form of draft picks or young players. And that's what I'm saying. It really depends on what their direction is after shopping Jimmy Butler. Because if they're going to a full rebuild, you're probably going to look at a fire sale. I mean, if you get rid of Jimmy Butler and you're not intent on retooling around Tyler Hero or Brendan Ingram or man, Bam Adebayo, then you probably move on from Bam Adebayo and you probably move on from Tyler Hero and go into a full rebuild. So it really depends on what they're trying to do. And then looking at let's see, the Houston Rockets, they're a young team where they can definitely use a Jimmy Butler. Now, again, they're going to have to part ways with about 2 or 3 of the young players. It really depends on who they'll be willing to give up. Tara Eason, I can't. Whitmore is a guy who could definitely fit in Miami. And that's what I'm saying. Realistically, with the Miami Heat, you're looking at a retool because you got Tyler Hero, you got Bam Adebayo, Jaquez Jr., Jovic, you got him. So you add, some young pieces to that team. Maybe you have a team there where you can definitely, add more pieces in the future, but it's definitely a nice upcoming team. So maybe you sway them with Terry Eason. Maybe you sway them with Cam Whitmore. Maybe they throw Reed Shepard even. It really depends on who they're willing to give up for a playoff run in Houston. All right, real quick, guys, we're going to get into the potential suitors for Brandon Ingram and how they will also conflict with Kyle Kuzma and our chances on moving on from him. But before we do, tonight's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You guys know me. I love going to games year round. Baseball season, basketball season, football season. I'm always on the road going to a game. And I'm not going to name drop anybody, but I've gone through all the ticketing apps. And to me, Game Time beats all of the competitors. And there's 3 reasons why. Number 1, Game Time picks. Correction makes it easy to save more on sports tickets, but it ain't just about sports, y'all. Concerts, comedy shows, theater events, etc. What else do I like? Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you don't catch yourself sitting behind a beam at Northwest Stadium. I know how that is, man. I'm trying to tell y'all. And the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Do yourself a favor. Take the guesswork of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, everybody, let's get back into this. So, Brandon Ingram, what respective teams could be looking for the services of Brandon Ingram? Well, again, number 1, the Los Angeles Lakers. The same team looking at Jimmy Butler and is on his wish list, and the same team who not only drafted Brandon Ingram, they also drafted Kyle Kuzma. Who else? The Denver Nuggets, the Houston Rockets, the Dallas Mavericks, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors, the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Miami Heat. So you guys see what the whole theme of this video is, that we have competition, that when you add Brandon Ingram, when you add Jimmy Butler to, the trade deadline of prospective players that you can acquire, then you have to look at a situation where, look, you have to beat them to the punch. Try to move on from Kyle Kuzma because we all know what it is in the second half of this season with the Washington Wizards. They are going to be a younger team. We have to move on from a lot of these vets. You're going to see Jonas Valanciunas move at some point, probably within the next 3 weeks, because after within the next 4 days, he will be eligible to be traded. Malcolm Brogdon, he's dealing with injuries, so out of the 3, he could be the hardest one to move on from, because, like I said, Kyle Kuzma has tremendous value. It really depends on asking price. Last year, it was 2 first-round picks. Are you going to reach that price? Well, I mean, you look at some of these teams. A lot of these teams, they kind of in 2 tiers, in my opinion. Teams that are up and coming and need that one piece for a playoff run. Looking at Cleveland, looking at Memphis, Miami Heat, you could say, Houston Rockets, Denver Nuggets, absolutely. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. They can definitely use a scoring punch. The Dallas Mavericks per se, but I think Dallas is very realistic for Kyle Kuzma, because do they really necessarily want to move on from the package to get both Brandon Ingram and Jimmy Butler are going to be immense. Now, you're going to argue Jimmy Butler's going to be the harder of the 3, because you got to know for a fact that he's going to be that one piece for you. $48 million price tag, and then he has a player option that he's going to enact. He's going to be turning 36. You best believe that he's going to enact that player option for $52 million. So you have to expect that Jimmy Butler's going to be around for a couple of years, and you got to be at peace with your salary cap situation. And it's that simple. And like I said, Brandon Ingram is going to take some draft compensation, because again, you're looking at New Orleans, Zion. We all know that he could be released. DeJounte Murray, could he be that guy to lead his team into the future? It remains to be seen. Even though if you make that move for him, you envision him being your point guard for at least the next 3 to 4 years. CJ McCollum, we know that he's not getting younger. He's definitely a guy who, he's a really good 2 guard. He can definitely bring the ball up, play point guard. He played point guard the year previous, but he's a nice 2 guard. All those years with Damian Lillard, there was a nice 1-2 punch out there in Portland. But they're in team in flux right now, because right now you're looking at probably releasing Zion Williamson. And if you move on from Zion, you're trading Brandon Ingram, and you're probably moving on from CJ McCollum. And DeJounte Murray is probably that one piece that you could add to, because you still got Trey Murphy. You still got some nice pieces in New Orleans, man. So, like I said, do they necessarily need to go into a full rebuild? No, I would try to get some value for Brandon Ingram. I would definitely try to get some value for CJ McCollum. And it really depends on, if you blow it up, then do you move from DeJounte Murray? And it really, the question is, how many times is the brother gonna get traded, man? Like, he should have never left San Antonio, in my opinion. So that's where my hit is at, guys. Like I said, Jimmy Butler and Brandon Ingram looks like they may be on the trade block. How does that affect Kyle Kuzma's trade value? We went over 3 factors. Number 1, contract value. Number 2, potential role. Number 3, interest. What teams are looking at? And like I said, the same teams looking at Jimmy Butler, the same teams looking at Brandon Ingram, they're looking at Kyle Kuzma. And if you want to move on from him and get maximum value, you have got to make it. You got to make it happen. Because if you wait, and I think there's times where you do sit back and wait for the market to unfold. And there's times where you want to be that first guy in there, man, making deals. And that's what I'm saying. I think that the Wizards should definitely be very aggressive at the trade deadline. And you try to add some young talent at the deadline, because after the 2025 draft, we're definitely heading in a younger direction. But you want to see some progression, not only from Bilal, but these 3 draft picks from this previous draft. And then 2025, you have high impact star players. So, like I said, we're heading in the right direction, but we've got to be aggressive at the deadline, get our money's worth, get some good assets back in return, whether in the form of draft capital or young players or even expiring contracts. And then when you look at the 2025 and even the 2026 NBA drafts, those could be the finishing touches on a nice and young core here in the nation's cap. So, all right, guys, real quick, tomorrow night, we're going to talk about Zion Williamson. If he's released by New Orleans, should the Wizards try to acquire him? I'm going to say no. But if they do indeed have interest, there should be certain parameters put into his contract so they can cover their butts if indeed he does not work out in the nation's cap. So we're going to do that and a preview for Friday night's game. And then again, Friday night, we're going to go live like we always do. So again, appreciate you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow night. Hail to the Wizards and peace.